Hey everyone, welcome back. April 1st, when you're seeing this. Let's see, what's the news to report? It's been a dreadful, dreadful month in Milwaukee. I think it's rained 90% of the days this month. It's just been very unenjoyable, very gray, very cold, and very wet. But hey, at least we all have this to look forward to, right? And summer's right around the corner. So I hope everyone's doing well. It's really wonderful to see so many people participating in discussions lately. Thanks so much for responding to my question about what people want to see in the upcoming posts. I'll be honest, there was a kind of a overwhelming amount of suggestions. There may be about 50 or so. And, everyone here is very important to me, so I try to take the time to respond to everyone. And I'm a careful writer, I think. So when I'm responding to something, it can take me 15 or 20 minutes just to write out a few sentences. So it took me a really long time, a few nights, to reply to everybody, just to acknowledge all the thoughtful comments. So thanks. And, you know, those comments will shape what we look at over the course of probably the next year or so. This piece we're doing this month, John Fahey's Tell Her to Come Back Home, was a suggestion that a few people made. So I can at least say I'm, listening and doing my best here. Thank you. What can I say about the tune? This was originally recorded by Uncle Dave Macon. I'm not sure if that's the correct pronunciation of his last name, but 1920s is when that was released. I want to say it was 1927, but I'm not sure. It was a banjo and fiddle tune, and I think this is definitely in that category of early hillbilly type records that John Fahey was collecting and was inspired by, in addition to the blues too. So he recorded it for the first time that I know of. I haven't checked all the Phonotone recordings, but the first commercial recording was on The Transfiguration of Blind Joe Death, and that first appeared in late 1965. So I want to say in the chronology of Fahey's timeline, I did make a few notes on that. I think it is after the Dance of Death and before the Great San Bernardino birthday party. This record, actually, I've never really known it very well, and I only have one copy. A lot of the Fahey records, I have several copies because I was interested in the releases, the pressings, and how some of them differentiated from each other over time. This one's really neat because the original release was 50 numbered copies. So there were only 50 of these originally produced, and they're hand numbered. I do have an image that I can show you. By the way, I'm referring to Claudio's book, the John Fahey Handbook. There is a wealth of information here. I'd highly recommend. I don't think you can still get the original, probably out of print, but there is a new revised and expanded edition that I just saw him talking about yesterday, actually. You can see my copy is very well worn. The pages are pretty disgusting, like from being touched way too much. I should get a new copy. But you can see here's what the original looked like, the original label. And everything on there, if the camera would focus, that would be amazing. There we go. Riverboat was the name of the, I guess, company or that was putting out the record. But here's an example of label number 1, and then here was number 13, nothing at all on it. So there is some variation even among the labels. And then in there was an insert that was handwritten as well. It looked like that. If you find a copy of one of these original 50, you can probably expect to pay. Well, I don't know what anything's worth now with the crazy couple of years we've had with inflation and the pandemic and everything. Things are getting expensive. But the last copy of one of these that sold was in 2020, and it sold for $1,500. So it's a little expensive. It's right up there in terms of rarity with the very original Blind Joe Death record, of which there were supposedly 100 copies, and I have never seen a copy come up for sale of that. But I have an idea it would be worth several $1,000s. And there's also a rare copy of The Dance of Death and Other Plantation Favorites. I don't know how many of those there were, but that was just in a plain white cover that had kind of a handwritten look to it. Not the second plain white cover, not that version. And those are usually a little cheaper, somewhere in the realm of $500 to $1,000, maybe less. And then this Riverboat pressing, the original one, very rare record. I'd like to have a copy. So if any of you have one, let me know. It went through a series of changes. The very first copy came out in 1965, and then it wasn't really officially released until 1967. Then you have the transatlantic versions of the record coming out in the late 60s, about 1968, which distributed to the UK. And then it officially became a Tacoma label pressing in 1974, so some 9 years later. Other interesting things about this record, I'm kind of a Stanley Kubrick fan, and if you didn't know this already, there's a scene in Clockwork Orange where Alex is in the record store and he's shopping for records, and he goes to check out, and a copy of this record is kind of like, I want to, if it's not front and center, it's next to the soundtrack to 2001: A Space Odyssey. And if there's any kind of Kubrick files out there, you know that everything in his movies was very purposefully placed. Nothing was really on accident. So I think that's really cool, being a big fan of Stanley Kubrick, seeing that he was at least aware of or possibly even a fan of John Fahey. So just a little bit of interesting stuff about the record. Is there anything else I should add? I don't think so. This will probably be a slightly shorter lesson. Most of them are closer to 45 minutes or an hour. This one might be more like a half hour, because you really just have two sections. And we can talk about those more in depth after I go through the full playthrough. So why don't we get to it? All right, friends, let's go all the way through this. My guitar is tuned to the same place that Fahey is on the record, which is about a half step low. So your low E will be a half step down, and then all the other strings as well. Here's where my E is tuned. A, D, G, B, E. All right. And we're recording? Yes, we are. Okay, good. Having some microphone problems this morning. All right, here we go. Whole thing through nice and slow, and I'll have to pause a few times for some page turns. So forgive me for that. And let's get this chord out of the way. There we go. Page turn, and then we'll pick it up at 36. quick page turn. All right, let's start it on measure 90 on that G chord. Great. I might have made one or two mistakes, maybe three or four. Just a few notes that my finger jumped a little too far. Let's break it down now and look at some of the things that are important in finer detail. See you in a second. All right, let's look at our first section now. The introduction and the ending of the tune are kind of similar. They really just rotate on two different chords. And it's one of these real nice things. I love it when Fahey does this. My first experience was with this particular thing he does was in When the Springtime Comes Again, where he takes common chords but just removes a note from them and plays it as an open string instead. Now, the music theory people, which I'm not a huge theory person, I mean, I studied it, I understand it, it's part of my degree in music, will tell you there's, very specific names for these chords. I really just think of it as he's playing a C chord, but he takes the middle finger out and gets the D in the C chord instead. So it's kind of like a C chord with a D in it. And then he shifts to this. Now, I really just think of it as an F chord with a G in it. So kind of similarly, you have a C with a D in it. So the next note up from C would be the second of the chord, or the second in the key of C. So it's kind of like I don't know what you'd call it, an add to, or I wouldn't call it a C9. And then the same thing with the F chord. You have the second note of an F. So F, G, A, B, C, D, F, A, C sharp, F, A, C in an F chord. But instead of having the A, you have a G, so the second up from F. That's the way I see this harmony. Whoops. If you plug this into like a chord namer, it will probably tell you this is some type of A minor chord or something. But I don't think of it as being that at all. Okay, so he's really just going back and forth between these two chords, holding the first finger down, moving the ring finger. Let's see what that looks like. Just measures 1 and 2. Now, at the end of measure 2, the placement of that ring finger, I think, is really important to getting the character of this down, and this highlights this technique that we've talked about so many times with Fahey's music and Leo's music, where you shift harmony before the downbeat of the measure. So measures 1 and 2 are kind of built around this C thing. Measures 3 and 4 would be built around this F thing. But the F thing happens just an eighth note before the measure and creates kind of a really interesting dissonance too, hearing these notes together. So once again, don't think of it as hammering on, because that's too much, but the note you see in parentheses, you really do want to hear it as a note that's being placed down. So once again. And I don't know about the placement of the ring finger. I would want to place it on the last eighth note of measure 4, going back to the C chord, but we can't really hear it, so we can't say for sure. I would place it down there. I think it's perfectly acceptable, though, to put it on the beat. Both of them work in this instance. And then we just kind of repeat measure 5. But now kind of highlighting with the D on top, and then a melody descending and ascending in the bass line. I played that kind of poorly. I don't know why, but in measure 8, he plays that last D pretty staccato. He hops off of it quick. So I tried to reflect that with the duration lines of the fingers, showing that after you play, you're going to lift before you even play the D in the bass. So 7 and 8 one more time. And then just kind of doing the exact same thing. I didn't add any editing measures 9 through 17 because it's essentially the same. Now measures 17 through measure 20, really the exact same chords, but he just moves the melody up a pair of strings with the middle finger now on the top string, the index finger on the second string. And then what you have there on beat 4 of measure 20 is just a grace note. It's the kind of thing where he's playing at such a tempo, it's really hard to determine if the grace note was intentional or if did he mean to actually have the 3rd fret down already, or is this an instance of him placing it even earlier than he intends on the last 8th note of the measure, like you see him doing and hear him doing in the end of measure 2 and similar measures. Okay. Measure 21 then. Melody back up on the top 2 strings. Essentially a repeat. Once again, another grace note in measure 29. Grace note in the bass. My inclination is to say he accidentally lifted the ring finger there and then placed it down quickly, and that's why we get a grace note. The parallel line at the end of the piece does not have that as a hammered on note, so I don't even really focus on playing that as a hammered on grace note at the beginning of measure 33. I just play it as a straight C in the bass. But you know, the point of these transcriptions is really to document what's on the record and what John Fahey's doing. And, you know, I can't be completely clairvoyant in my understanding of these tunes. So that's my suspicion, but we should leave it like it is in the transcription. So he just strums that really, it's weird. After going through the introduction, I start to embrace the dissonance, and I hear this now as a really beautiful chord. And just as an anecdote here, I've been playing this intro as part of our mindfulness exercise in the beginning of my classes, and the kids really like it. I didn't think they would like it, but they love this tune. Well, not the whole thing, but just this introduction here, measures 1 through 35. It evokes a kind of a strong emotional response from them. And that's interesting, given that they're of a completely different socio-cultural background than I am. All right, let's make a pause there. One more thing I wanted to mention, and it's probably the most difficult aspect of this. When we're in this position, we're always used to playing a C chord with the E down. Now, what does that do? When we push down the E with our middle finger, that actually makes the 4th string sit a little lower, and it makes it a lot easier for our ring finger to clear the string. So what happens when we lift that? Now the string sits a little higher, and you might have a tendency to get that sound when you go to play that D. You just have to be extra careful, maybe rotate that wrist ever so slightly so it gets the ring finger up a little bit and clear of the D string. You'll hear in John's recording, the second time through this section at the end of the piece, he starts to get, it's almost as if he becomes a little fatigued, and a lot of those Ds start to have that little bit of a pingy quality to them, as if the tone's not coming out completely clear. All right, I'll make a cut there and let's look at the next section. Let's have a look now at the B section. This is borrowed very, very heavily from Uncle Dave Macon's recording, Tell Her to Come Back Home. The melody's there, the harmony's there, so there's no question about where it came from. It's in the title, so Fahey's not really trying to disguise it either. Okay. Most of what we're going to need to talk about here is in the movement of the chord shifting. All right, so what happened there? When you play, you're going to lift the first finger before you slide. So when you get up there, you pluck only the A in the melody, and when you slide back to the G, you play only a G in the bass, and you're going to somewhere in there get the first finger back down. Now, how do I know that the left hand works this way? Well, it's simple. It's part of my big forensic listening, and when I really listen to things slow, occasionally, when he gets there and plays the first string, I occasionally hear the second string ringing through sympathetically, or maybe just as a result of the lift off, it's moving a little bit. So you can just very, 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 very subtly hear the B ringing behind the A. You don't hear a D ringing behind the A or underneath the A. You also never hear that note slide up. All right, so he's definitely lifting the first finger. It's kind of nice because it takes a little bit of the pressure off the left hand. And the next question is, well, if he lifts the first finger, does he lift any other fingers? No, he doesn't, because sometimes right there, that move, every now and then he'll hit it just hard enough that you get a little bit of that note in there. That's an F sharp. All right, it's not a note you really want to hear, but the presence of it occasionally in the recording tells us that this is the position, these three fingers, that he's shifting around. First finger not included. You got to get the first finger back down pretty quick. Measure 38 at the end, you'll see that. I have it indicated as being plucked clearly. Now, in the recording, you can hear it plucked, but it barely comes out, and I think it's just because he has a hard time getting it down in time. So a lot of times you just get a sound like that. I suppose I could write the note in a rectangular box indicating that it's kind of transitional, somewhere in between a pressure, an application of pressure, or a release in pressure. But I really don't think that's the intention. So what I went with here is just writing it as a note that comes out cleanly. Like that. We get a little bit of a relief in measure 40 because he doesn't go for the note that time. Sorry. The other thing, I guess, the interesting contrast is he's got these interesting chords for the beginning and the end of the tune, but he's playing with more conventional harmony for this arranged section here. So really just C up to what would kind of be a D, but not really. I think of it more as just a movement in the melody and the bass, and not necessarily a change in the harmony. So C, G, C. Quite simple in terms of harmony, right? 44, let's just play the second time through this phrase. And then we land on the F chord. So measures 44 through 51, almost a direct repeat of the first time through. But we have the second part now, the second half of the B section. So we're on the F chord. Important that you do the thumb over in the bass, and I know a lot of people really try and stay away from that, but you know, it's hard to get the movement in the bass if you're doing a bar. It can be done, right? Let's see. But then getting the open E on the top, open E on the bottom would require some gymnastics that I just think are not worth avoiding this fingering over, okay? So getting to the F chord again. Your first finger down. In the F chord, we have a C in common between the F and the C. But there, he would lift everything, shifts to the G harmony. Right. Come on, these tuners are tight. Ugh. Okay, that's a little better. Shifts from the F to the C to the G and back to C. So from 52, one more time. So cool chromatic movement with the thumb there, and measure 57. All bass notes, just all brushes with the thumb here. Landing on the G, C. And then very much a repeat through, almost identical. There, 62. Once again, it's kind of a hidden G chord because you almost look at it and think, oh, I'm just going to rock my ring finger over. Nope, it's a full harmony change to G. 61 again. Sorry. G, C. Now he has to double the bass there at the end of 67 to get back into the backwards pattern. And that's one thing I didn't mention. When he goes to measure 52, the second half of the B section here, more conventional bass, low notes on 1 and 3, higher notes in the bass on 2 and 4, and then he reverses the bass line again when he gets back to the sliding portion of the theme. So let's just look at that. I should probably make a cut. But we're, yeah, let's make a cut. All right, so the second time through the first portion of the B section now. And you can see there's the real big struggle, getting a nice clean, gotta grease up my fingers a little bit. Measure 68 again. So 70, there's another one of those difficult notes on the second string, the very last note of the measure, because like I said, Fahey almost never, I don't think ever gets him to come out cleanly. So 70. Oh, sorry. Repeat. I started to take the wrong turn. 76. Now that's the weirdest note of all of the repetitions here, because measure 78, every similar instance of the move where you go, it's like the last time through the sliding part, he'll never put a C on the last eighth note of a measure. So that one might catch you by surprise. 80 again. Almost the same. Page turn. I slopped a little bit there. My finger pick started coming off and I missed a note. So measure 96, 97 again. That A that we get on the first beat of measure 97 is unusual. That's not something that he does in most presentations of this particular part. So that might catch you by surprise too. Transition back to the intro and exit theme here, measure 99, and it's interesting. It's the cadence here. It serves as both an ending to the B section, but also the beginning. Normally, you would cadence and then start your new section. This blends the two together. Really kind of interesting bit of writing here. So measure 100, just a very interesting variation on beat 4 there. The way he plays changes the new chord on the fourth beat instead of the and of the fourth beat. Let me play that again. Once again, gets the chord down on the down of beat 4 instead of the and of beat 4. Let's pick it back up from 108. Fantastic. I love this tune. Thank you for recommending it. A few things. Okay. Well, that ended perfectly. I see my camera just shut off because the memory card's full. So, great. Didn't need you any more anyway. Bye. Um, one little comment about measure 15 on these rolled chords. I don't know how, but I would watch Fahey a lot, just freehand chords like this. He probably looked down at the strings to make sure he was going to hit them. A lot of times I'll just hook like my pinky or my ring finger and strum so I have some sense of understanding where I am and I don't accidentally hit the first string. I also wrap my thumb over so I don't, I mean, that would sound terrible if I even get that. So you don't want it, but sometimes I put it there just for a little extra insurance. Okay. Let's see. I'll make a cut there and wrap it up. All right, everybody, thanks for hanging in there for the whole thing. I hope you enjoy this one as much as I do. I don't know if I have much else to say about it. But I do recall first transcribing it, and it's the amount of fun I had playing it, and I really like playing it on this maple Euphonon. Maybe it's just a kind of a nostalgia thing. I got that guitar about 3 years ago, and it was right around the time that I was kind of learning this tune the first time, and so I played it a lot on this guitar. That's really why I wanted to record it on this one. As far as what's next for next month, I don't know. We'll have to figure it out in a few days here. As far as what's new, a few things I like to save, like just kind of like my ideas and little surprises and things for this wrap up. I did get another original Tacoma shirt. I actually wore it for my last recording, the Thoth song. But this is really cool. It's an original design, and a pretty rare one too. I think it's so cool the way it has a pocket. So I'll probably work on getting some replicas of this made. I have been thinking about trying to reach out to Fantasy Records, who owns Tacoma, to see if they'd be willing to license me the rights to mass produce these shirts, these faithful replica Tacoma shirts. But I can't even be bothered with worrying about that kind of stuff now, because licensing agreements are just so petty and just hardly worth your time. So we'll see. I did also get, I was offered a contract though to do a Blind Blake book. So that's going to definitely be on my mind in the coming months, and I'll be reaching out to all of you to see what would you like to see, and then hopefully too, I aim to finish it by the end of summer, and knowing how slow licensing and all that works, hopefully it would be out around Christmas this year. But I can't make any promises there. But if it does, I'll buy a bunch of copies and hopefully give away a bunch of complimentary copies to do some kind of thing on the Patreon for that. So that's the news from Lake Michigan. Have a wonderful month of April. Thanks again for helping me continue to do this. Always feel free to reach out, write me on the Patreon, either on a post or a private message. I respond to everything, so don't be shy. And we'll see you soon. Take care.